Sometimes the most important thing in life is getting a fresh start. I moved into this apartment 6 months ago. It wasn't much. Cheap, small, and just far enough from everything I wanted to forget. The walls were thin, the pipes groaned in the night, and the air smelled faintly of dust and old wood. But it was mine. The building itself was old, with a faded exterior that had seen better days. The street outside was quiet, almost eerily so, with only the occasional car passing by. As I turned the key in the lock for the first time, a mix of excitement and apprehension washed over me. This was a new beginning, a chance to start fresh. The living room was bare, just an empty space waiting to be filled with memories. The bedroom was modest, with a single window that let in a sliver of light. There was a vent above my bed that hovered over me as I slept. The bathroom was functional, if not a bit outdated. The faucet dripped occasionally, a reminder of the apartment's age. As night fell, the apartment took on a different character. The moonlight cast eerie shadows, and the silence was almost deafening. But despite its flaws, it was my sanctuary. The first time I heard it, I convinced myself it was nothing. A slow, dragging scrape, like nails, or something sharper, raking against metal. I remember the sound echoing through the vents, sending chills down my spine. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just the old building settling, but the noise persisted, growing louder and more insistent. Each night it returned, a haunting reminder that something, or someone, was there. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the sense of an unseen presence lurking just out of sight. The sound became a nightly ritual, a sinister lullaby that kept me on edge. Then I heard breathing, shallow, uneven, not mine. It was coming from the vent. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound was so close, so real. I strained to listen, trying to make sense of it. The breathing continued, a haunting rhythm that sent chills down my spine. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. All I could do was listen and hope it would stop. The hairs on my arms stood on end. I could feel the chill creeping up my spine, a cold shiver that seemed to come from nowhere. I turned onto my side, peering up at the vent. The darkness seemed to thicken around it, as if the shadows were alive, moving and shifting. The slats cast jagged shadows across the ceiling, creating a pattern that danced and flickered. It was almost hypnotic, drawing my eyes to the shifting shapes. I held my breath, straining to hear. My eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of movement. The shadows seemed to grow darker, more menacing, as if they were closing in on me. I slowly exhaled, trying to calm my racing heart, but the feeling of being watched, of something lurking just out of sight, refused to leave me. Then, a noise. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, angling it toward the vent. The light flared, and for just a fraction of a second, I saw them. Two small, milky white eyes staring at me from the darkness inside the vent. They were not just any eyes, they were hauntingly white, almost ghostly, and seemed to pierce through the shadows. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. The air around me felt colder, and a shiver ran down my spine. The eyes vanished as quickly as they had appeared, leaving me questioning my sanity. Was it real, or just a trick of the light? I sat there, phone still in hand, staring at the vent, my mind racing with possibilities. What could those eyes belong to? A ghost, an animal, or something far more sinister? Gathering my courage, I decided to take a closer look. I inched closer to the vent, the flashlight beam steady, illuminating the path ahead. But as I peered inside, there was nothing, just an empty dark space. A sense of relief washed over me, but the memory of those eyes lingered, haunting my thoughts. I lay there for hours after that, unable to sleep. The room was cloaked in darkness, shadows dancing eerily on the walls. I glanced at the clock, 3 a.m., the witching hour. I strained my ears, listening for any sound, any hint that I wasn't alone. The silence was deafening, amplifying my fear. I felt a cold sweat trickle down my back as I scanned the room, every shadow a potential threat. My hands trembled as I clutched the blanket, my eyes darting from corner to corner. The sense of dread was overwhelming, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, lurking just out of sight. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, as if the darkness itself was pressing down on me. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud and erratic, echoing in the silence. The vent, covered in dust and cobwebs, seemed to mock my fear. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves, but the unease only grew. The room was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that makes you question every shadow, every flicker of light. I leaned in closer, squinting to see if there was anything I had missed, but there was nothing, just an empty vent. The sense of dread lingered, refusing to dissipate. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, lurking just out of sight. Was it all in my head, or was there truly something sinister hiding in the darkness? I didn't sleep that night. My mind was racing, thoughts swirling like a storm. Every creak and whisper from the vent sent chills down my spine. I kept glancing at the clock, watching the hours slip away. The darkness felt alive, pressing in on me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The night stretched on endlessly, each minute dragging into the next. It was a night of pure, unrelenting dread. The next morning, I knocked on my landlord's door. The hallway was dimly lit, casting eerie shadows on the walls. He was an old man with deep-set wrinkles and a weary look in his eyes. The kind who smelled like cigarettes, the smoke curling around him like a ghostly shroud, and coffee that had been sitting too long on the burner, filling the air with a stale, bitter scent. His apartment was cluttered with old books and dusty furniture, each item telling a story of neglect. A single light bulb flickered overhead, casting an unsettling glow. The floorboards creaked under my feet, adding to the sense of unease. Would I find the answer I was looking for? Would he have a story to tell? "There's something in my vent," I told him, "something alive." He barely looked up from his newspaper. "This building's got history," he muttered. "You get used to it." I couldn't believe his nonchalance. I pressed on, describing the noises, the scratching, the whispers. He sighed, finally putting down his paper and looked at me with a mix of annoyance and boredom. "Look," he said, "I've been here for over 20 years. Trust me, it's nothing. Just the building settling." As I walked down the hallways, he stuck his head out and said, "Don't go poking around where you don't belong." It sounded like a warning. I felt a chill run down my spine, feeling more confused and unsettled than ever. The noises stopped. For 3 nights I heard nothing. No scratching, no breathing. I started to think maybe it really had just been my imagination. Each night I lay in bed, straining to hear even the faintest sound. The silence was deafening, almost as if the apartment itself was holding its breath. My mind raced with thoughts. Was it really over, or was something else at play? The quiet was unsettling, making me question everything I had experienced. Then, on the 4th night, I woke up to something worse. The whispering. It was coming from inside the vent. Low, breathy murmurs, like someone speaking just below the range of hearing. I strained to listen, my heart pounding in my chest. The whispers were unintelligible, but they carried a sense of urgency, a desperate plea. I reached out towards the vent, my fingers trembling. The darkness inside seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Fear gripped me. I couldn't make out words, but I felt them. A deep, rasping voice, not in my ears, but in my bones. It was as if the air itself was whispering secrets, secrets meant only for me. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, filling the room with an oppressive presence. I could feel my heart racing, my breath quickening as the unintelligible words wrapped around me like a cold, suffocating blanket. Later in the night, as I lay there sleepless, I heard a sound. I turned on the flashlight. My breath hitched as the beam landed on the vent. Something was pressed against it from the inside. A face. The slats bent outward, bulging as if the thing inside was pushing against them, trying to squeeze through. Its skin was stretched thin and gray, its mouth wide and lipless, curling up in an unnatural grin. Its eyes, those dead, white, lidless eyes, were locked onto mine. I felt a chill run down my spine, my heart pounding in my chest. The flashlight trembled in my hand, casting erratic shadows on the walls. The face pressed harder against the slats, as if trying to break free. I recoiled, unable to tear my eyes away from the horrifying sight. The slats creaked ominously, the sound of metal bending filling the room. Those unblinking eyes remained fixed on me, unyielding and relentless. I scrambled out of bed so fast I hit the floor. My heart was pounding in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears. My head slammed against the nightstand, but I barely felt it. The adrenaline was coursing through my veins, numbing the pain. The room was spinning, my vision swimming in panic. I could barely make out the shapes around me. Everything was a blur. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it retreated. The shadowy figure melted back into the darkness, leaving me gasping for breath. I sat there on the cold floor, trying to catch my breath. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. My eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of the intruder. Sweat dripped down my face, my body trembling with fear. Slowly, I got to my feet, every muscle in my body tense. I was leaving. I didn't care about breaking the lease. I didn't care about the money. I just wanted out. The apartment had become a prison, and every creak and whisper felt like a threat. My heart pounded as I packed, each item thrown into the suitcase a step closer to freedom. I grabbed my keys, the metal cold in my hand, and took one last look around. The memories, the fear, it all stayed behind as I stepped into the hallway. I was finally free, or so I hoped. I didn't stop, I didn't turn back. I left the apartment, my belongings, everything. I just kept running. The fear was overwhelming, and I knew I could never return. The memories of that place, the haunting presence, it was all too much to bear. And so I ran, never looking back. I never went back. The memory of that night still haunts me. I don't know what was in that vent. The darkness seemed to breathe, alive with an unseen presence. But sometimes, even though I left that building far behind in the dead of night, I hear it. The sound is unmistakable, a chilling reminder of that eerie encounter. The slow, deliberate scraping inside the walls. It's as if something is trying to claw its way out, a relentless haunting noise that sends shivers down my spine. I lie there, paralyzed, wondering if this is reality or my nightmare. I can't move, can't breathe. Is what I'm hearing real? Is it something out there? Or is it something that's inside of me?